The Mirage 2000 5F takes off for France in War Thunder. Let's check it out. Okay, so normally in these reviews, I give you a little info about the history of the aircraft to help explain what it is, why it performs the way it does, and why it has the weapons it has, and so on, right? Well, the Mirage 2000 5F is in a weird spot, because what we have in the game doesn't really match up with anything I can find in primary sources about the entire Mirage 2000 family. As far as I've been able to find, the 5F was a batch of 37 Mirage 2000C models that were upgraded for the French Air Force to get some newer weapon systems into service, but also to demonstrate an effective upgrade path for existing Mirage 2000 customers. Well, I couldn't find anything confirming compatibility with air-to-ground weapons, and as far as I could find, the 5F was an upgraded interceptor version. The jet in War Thunder appears to be closer to the Mirage 2005 Mark II or the Mirage 2009, both of which were export versions of the jet and not flown operationally by France, but did get air-to-ground ordnance. Piling onto this, the new PGM rocket-boosted glide bombs that this plane gets are primarily used by the United Arab Emirates, who flew the 2009 along with the United Kingdom. So that's a big confusing mess. And as I'm discussing this plane and calling it the 5F, just know in the back of your mind that the jet in the game seems more like an amalgamation of 2 or 3 different upgraded export multi-role models of the original Mirage 2000C coming out in the 1990s. The actual 5F in French service was deployed operationally in Syria, but in that theater, it flew as a fighter escort for Rafales carrying out ground strikes, rather than doing any ground strike sorties themselves. In the end, all these different upgrade models are scheduled to be in service with their respective operators at least into the 2030s. What we get in War Thunder is the Mirage 2000 5F. This is a jet fighter in rank 8 of the French air tree with a battle rating of 12.0. This jet gets a full ballistics computer with all the top tier features, as well as the EEGS for its guns. The radar set is the Thales RDY, a reasonably high-performance radar with look-down all aspect, look-down head-on, look-up search, and track-while scan modes, as well as ACM boresight targeting and IFF. You can also take the Damocles targeting pod that provides a really strong optical zoom, thermal sights, and an auto tracker. For loadouts, the jet gets a huge selection of both air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons, including missiles, bombs, and rocket pods. Its basic air-to-air missile is the Matra 550 Magic II. This is a high-performance, all-aspect IR missile with 35 Gs of pull and reasonably good targeting. The Magic II is going to be the jet's primary dogfight weapon. It also gets both versions of the Super 530, the D and F. These are both semi-active radar weapons, with the D having Doppler tracking, better maneuvering, and a slightly better engine. For air-to-ground weapons, you can take a variety of different laser-guided bombs in different sizes and in different quantities. My personal preference is usually for a smaller number of larger weapons. You can also take the famous AS-30L, which is a laser-guided anti-tank missile with very good performance and an effective range of 8 to 10 kilometers. The new weapons for the 5F are a set of rocket-boosted glide bombs, the PGM 500 and the PGM 2000. These are TV-guided and have a huge range. I've gotten hits with them past 20 kilometers at altitude, but they're very slow, and I strongly suggest using the Damocles targeting pod with them, but more on that later. The flight performance of the 5F is basically the same as other versions of the Mirage 2000. Really, it's excellent. The jet has a powerful engine that accelerates well throughout the entire power curve, it's got a great rate of climb, and it's highly agile in most flight situations. Being a delta-winged jet, it does have a tendency to bleed off speed in tight turns a little faster than some other designs, but it has leading-edge slats that automatically deploy, which helps to reduce this a bit compared to something like the Mirage 3. If you're able to keep it at medium speeds, really you can get some insane energy turns out of this thing. One caveat to know, the jet can fly itself apart in level flight, and when you start getting those speed warnings, it's a good idea to actually slow down a little bit. Plus, the air brake works pretty well. Generally speaking though, the flight performance is almost identical to the Mirage 2000C right before it in the tech tree. Flying the Mirage 2005F into air battles is largely the same as other versions of the plane, with the addition of some ground attack options. If you want to fly out for pure air combat, you're usually going to be using a pair of 530s and a pair of Magic 2s, plus maybe a drop tank on the larger maps. Adding the drop tank removes any real fuel issues, and it allows you to swing wide for a flank if you want, again, even on the larger maps. Or you can just fly right into the action with the main pack. You can also take some air-to-ground ordnance and go after some ground targets, or tag a strategic base, from a pretty reasonable distance, but just don't hesitate to jettison your ordnance early if you get jumped on your way to the targets. If you fly out for close air support, the 5F is truly a multi-role fighter, which can do air sweeps or attack ground targets with equal ability. The AS-30L is a particularly effective weapon, as it's fast and it can be used from a really good distance. But the real star of the show is the new PGM TV-guided glide bomb. These come in two sizes and have a small rocket motor on the bottom to boost their range a bit, but try to think of them as glide bombs and not missiles. The rocket only burns for a few moments, and this really won't be shooting out in front of you or anything. These are very slow and they're going to take a while to get to the target. Still, if you side climb and get up to altitude, you can drop these things from an incredible distance. But you usually are going to have trouble hitting player vehicles unless you get closer. You're up against the game's render distances, your graphics settings, and the fact that these are glide bombs and they can take a while to reach the target. Like, it can take over a minute from longer ranges. So the target might have moved in a cover or gotten taken out before your PGM lands. Still, I found them to be very effective, and despite their high cost and spawn points, these are definitely my favorite weapons flying this plane out into ground battles. One bit of advice is to make sure you take the Damocles targeting pod for the extra zoom and thermal sights. It makes a huge difference. Visually, this is a great looking jet, just like the other Mirages in the game. You can pick up 3 custom paint jobs for it, but personally, I generally prefer the default skin. Landing isn't too difficult, but just remember that delta-wing jets like this usually come in kinda hot. You can drop landing gear at about 400 kilometers an hour, and you won't get to use the drag chute if you have countermeasures, so effectively no drag chute. The cockpit on the jet is outstanding. The visual detail is great, the MFDs are in good spots with useful info, it's got a moving map display, a useful HUD, and the visibility in all directions is great. Excellent cockpit for VR. To close out on the Mirage 2005F. This jet has a great set of air-to-air missiles, a powerful radar, and the Damocles targeting pod. It gets a strong selection of air-to-ground weapons, including the very long-range PGM glide bombs, and it has really good dogfighting agility. However, it can fly itself apart in level flight, it can only take 2 of each kind of missile, and it still bleeds off energy a little bit more than other 4th generation fighters in a sustained rate turn. The final verdict on the Mirage 2005F is that this jet is now basically the ultimate multi-role fighter in the French air tree as of summer 2023. In my opinion, this is absolutely worth the grind, and it'll probably remain competitive in both air and ground battles for quite a long time. As always, thanks for watching.